So let's start the stage. So I am Christine Seeman. I'm going to present here kind of my thoughtful AI for the Rubyist, and it's going to be a discovery in 3 acts. I love a good theme, so I was actually inspired by Rush's 2112 album. Now, if you haven't heard of this, Rush released this album here in 1976. It was a story about discovery, tradition, and balance. And for those unfamiliar, let me set what the plot actually is. So, society is controlled by the priests of the Temple of Syrinx. Now, this might be hard to imagine, but it was an authoritarian group that controlled all aspects of life, including what technology and culture people could access. I'm sure here in America, we don't know anything about this authoritarian type of control, but they believe in absolute order and reject anything that might disrupt their control. Our protagonist in the 2112 album discovered an ancient guitar in a cave. It was something beautiful and expressive that predated the current regime. They were excited by the discovery, and they brought it to the priests, thinking that they would share the protagonist's enthusiasm. Instead, they destroyed it, calling it primitive and dangerous to the order. Devastated, the hero dreams of the elder race, who created beautiful things. And they ultimately discovered that they couldn't bear to live in a world without creativity and individual expression. The album kind of ends ambiguously, with, and we don't know if it was liberation or further oppression that happened. But what I'm hoping that we can discover, and how this maps with our journey into AI, is that we may be facing some new tools. Our AI, we may have some resistance from some traditional approaches, which kind of could be considered to be our priests going on there, as well as we kind of need to seek some wisdom from our community leaders, to be our oracles, to find the right path forward. And unlike that ambiguous ending, we get to write our own resolution, one where we, the Ruby community, can thoughtfully integrate AI while preserving everything that makes us special. So let's move on to our first act with our discovery. And if you find any of these lyrics at the bottom of the screen a little bit confusing, check out the 2112 song and album later on. But if they are a little, you don't understand what's going on there, you can just ignore that bottom left-hand corner. So let's start. You as a Ruby developer probably like it because it's a delight to program in. But sometimes that AI feels different. It doesn't quite align with what you're thinking. So this definitely looks familiar. It's our Ruby code. It's how we enjoy it. It's how it feels natural. It just works together. But then some of the results, or what you might see from AI, it just doesn't feel right. It's not that clean, readable code that you're used to. And why it is that clean, readable code is because of how it was made with Yukihiro Matsumoto. Mats, how he developed it is he designed it for humans, not for machines. And we have our own Ruby community core values that influence this code. Mini Swan. So Matt is nice, so we are nice. It's not just about, it's about that intention that goes into the code and the community. It's about our developer happiness we see with it, and that readability is something we just love about Ruby, and how we can be expressive with language. And so we have this new discovery. These AI tools kind of enter our world, and they promise speed and efficiency, but we kind of are excited, but there's uncertainty going on here. And hopefully these tools, you know, some of them may look a little bit familiar, and it might be ones that you've started trying out. But with that excitement and this discovery, we also have a different kind of fear, this fear of change, maybe this fear of losing craftsmanship or deep knowledge. And it's something that as a Ruby developer, you usually care deeply about your craft. So these could be things that are going through your head while you're using it. Is this cheating? Are you becoming dependent on this crutch? This fear is real and valid, and it's something that we should consider. But remember, you're not alone with these new discoveries and these new fears going on here. I did a quick kind of survey with results, and I got them posted up a couple different places. But it kind of seems like Ruby and developers in general are kind of split on AI. We find that the code, it works that some of the time that's generated, but a lot of the time it's not idiomatic. That means it's not just inherently native in the language that it should be native in. And there's a lot of concern going around about use it or lose it with your fundamental skills. And one of the use cases that the community has kind of agreed on is it is kind of nice, for tests, but sometimes those need rewrites too. So some of the adoption statistics from I kind of ran this survey September 22nd till about today. I got about 37 responses. And as of right now, people, only about 35% regular users, definitely some abysmal rates with how it was handling meta programming, as well as like the adoption is starting, but it's not all the way there. And some additional insights from it was quotes about how people were worried about how it was going to create indigent servants to those tools, as well as going on and thinking about these use it or lose it type skills. But what if we could kind of have both? AI that enhances our craftsmanship, but doesn't replace it. And it's something that actually helps us while building that deeper knowledge. And so in our journey, we have had that initial discovery. We have found some of those powerful AI tools. But let's continue on and see what this conflict might be, what this tension is, and if we can find some additional community wisdom going on. So 2112, we had our protagonists, and they were really excited to share what they found. But when they brought it into the priests, it wasn't well received. So let's see what parts of it we can actually excel or learn from. So with different articles and what's going on now in our community, we have kind of landed on some things that currently AI is doing well. Code generation, at least with the basic CRUD operations and kind of that boilerplate. It also does very well with kind of scaffolding on those basic Rails models and controllers. Refactoring. It's a lot of the time when you have your methods, maybe in individual or over a span of some business logic layer, it does really well with refactoring. It's kind of like fancier rename and replace going on, as well as documentation. It can help you understand your code and as well as explain it to you. And if it can do that, a lot of the time it can spit that out onto a markdown file quite well, as well as Git commits. There is no more excuses with having flimsy fixed it, or how we used to have some of those one-liners going on with our Git commits. A lot of the time we can get more verbose why and get those committed easily. and as well as testing. That's one that the use cases I've seen around with myself on using AI, as well as what our current Ruby community is using it for, is that getting those basic test cases in, getting the scaffolding in, or getting, when you're doing some refactor work, easily having a generated test going on there is something that it has done really well. But with things it does well, there's also the things that it doesn't do quite so well. So metaprogramming, that's one that Rails magic confusion. Sometimes that doesn't work so well with what the result actually is, as well as Ruby idioms and some of the style. I'm talking about endless methods. Sometimes the it blocks, omitting hash values, those kind of things can trip up some of the AI models currently. As well as it loves to pattern match going on there. If anybody's been playing around with AI lately, have you had any results that's done and it's kind of felt procedural? Maybe even a little bit like, I used to be a Java programmer, so I'm very sensitive to Java patterns going on there. And so like some of the results I have it sends back to me, and I was like, ooh, I'm getting icky Java vibes from this, and it's supposed to be Ruby. What are we doing, AI? As well as sometimes it's not so great, yeah, with those Ruby specific blocks and iterators, reaching for those bare base objects that are like the core of Ruby. Sometimes that's not what the results actually use. And so sometimes that code, it just doesn't match up what you get generated. It's a lot of the time, maybe you have to go back to the blocks, or maybe you feel like it was a waste of time in the first place. And when all you really wanted was your idiomatic Ruby or your Rails conventions going on there. And so with that, it's something that we need to learn further, which is that thoughtful prompting and our prompting with purpose really is the way to go. It's how we can teach it to speak Ruby or get those results that we actually want. And so with that prompting with purpose, you can't be ambiguous. You can't have an ending, and kind of like some of these prog rock songs. You have to give the information, and how you give that information makes a big difference on the result. So you might just have, say, write me a method. But if you write it with a little bit more intention, you are a senior Ruby developer, which of course, you are, go you. And you're going to follow the Ruby style guide in your Rails 7.1 application. Write this method to find a user by ID, given the following requirements. You're going to get a much, much different result. Another one, to help out with, don't just write me a Git message. How about you write me a Git message that's conversational, conventional, with my context, as well as make sure you check out all these changes that happened. Make sure I have a certain format, because like maybe my team's got cares about that kind of thing, as well as make sure you have a certain, character max, because it's important to have our standards with our Git commits. And in knowing that prompting with purpose, there's even more advanced ways of how you can think of it. You could go through with your chain of thought. So, hey, AI, explain to me your reasoning step by step. The results sometimes are those things that are exactly what you need for your documentation too, further on. Maybe you need to set some constraints. Refactor this, but do it in 5 or less lines. You can also go with error analysis, this is actually one of my favorite ways of using AI right now. Dump the stack trace, have it analyze it for you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be also doing your own analysis, but we all know that sometimes looking through what 150 lines of what just happened there, only to have to pull out one line. This and what's going on with the advanced prompting is a huge help. Verification prompting. So after you have prompted, this is something that you ask yourself. After generating the code, does this feel Ruby-like? What are the potential issues? And, maybe what edge cases I am missing. This is a newer one, but it's one that it can really help level up prompting, is don't use negatives, because that's something that the AI will focus on. Use what you want. Be specific, set your context. Don't say, don't use webpacks, don't use callbacks. Instead say, use this for my assets, use service objects. And this good prompting is a skill that is worth developing. So this is something that we have started to learn, and more members of the community are putting out more information out there about how they are using it. Just like Avdi, he used it for working faster and leveraging that LLM as his hands. It's about having AI as a pair programming partner. That's a partner, not replacement. Human oversight with decision making by leveraging the AI for some of those tedious tasks, but you can free up your mind to help keep it creative. But have anybody else felt when you're trying to do maybe some of your AI development, and maybe you're doing a lot of context switching around with using that? This kind of has a hidden cost when you're trying to maybe leverage AI for other tasks while maybe you go off and do a code review. One thing that you have to keep in mind is we have limitations on how much we can focus on. We ourselves are not computers and the AI going on here. And so you only have so much focus available to you. AI and using it inherently creates that context switching. You're jumping around, writing code, evaluating suggestions. And so sometimes there can be a cost with it. Think about like how long maybe your brain fog may last, or like how long it may take you to have to switch focus and get back into a flow state. And there's a lot of research backing on this inherent psychology going on with context switching. And this is one of those things that we also had some concerns for the whole Ruby community with this. That, remember, don't bring that forklift to the gym. Our human skills are use it or lose it, as well as just more concern about how you are using your brain. And, if you don't use those basics, could you forget them? As well as how much are you going to be needing the AI, and how much you can do without it. As well as, this is one that I've heard from a couple of people. Will junior developers not learn the fundamentals if they are always relying on the AI tooling? And this is another real psychology concern. If you haven't heard of it, it's called automation bias. So this is kind of the inherent idea that what a computer does is smarter and is considered a more valid, more okay result than what maybe a human can do. And so that tendency to assume computers know more than humans, which is not necessarily correct. And AI doesn't understand your code base as much as maybe you do. It doesn't have that inherent knowledge or those tickets you've worked on or that deep context. And so it is important to one of to help with that bias is to have that skepticism about what you are actually seeing. And this is another one of those that's a psychology concern that has some research to it. And the NIST also has a whole workflow on what you can do to help combat that automation bias and how to check it. And so remember, you are the Ruby expert and the AI is just the tool going on there. So with that intention, you have to choose your tools mindfully. Does this tool help or hinder your Ruby instincts? Does it explain its suggestions? Can it easily review and test the code? Does it understand Rails conventions and the Ruby idioms? And this is something that, is still evolving and changing all the time, but something that you have to take into account when you are choosing your tools. Enhance rather than replace your judgment. And always look for a tool that supports like the verification on can they explain why they made those suggestions, as well as where did you get your information from. So we saw some AI capabilities and limitations, as well as we understand that we really should be looking for a partnership over replacement. So let's continue on with our journey and see what kind of resolution we could find. So we're transitioning from that exploration to wisdom, just like how our protagonist sought the oracle's guidance after a conflict with the priests. We have had our exploration and conflict, and now we need to kind of seek some practical wisdom. So consulting some oracles of our own or technology and community leaders, what we can see is there is even more emphasis on going on that code is kind of becoming cheap. But what you have is understanding and judgment. And that is something that will be important to bring to what you do in your job and what you do in your role. And so with Kent Beck, he emphasized how important it is to bring your own judgment and wisdom, not just the code of the results. I always love to quote Sandy Metz if I can. And I thought this one was interesting, especially to think of in the context of AI. So any fool, so maybe we could consider this, any AI, any LLM can write code, but good programmers, and that's you, the human context, write code that you can understand, that other people can understand. As well as from Martin Fowler here, it's valuable for understanding existing code over using it to generate mass amounts of code. And that kind of circles back with Kent Beck, that code is becoming even more cheap in the world of AI going on here. So with some wisdom, let's think about when we can use AI. Rails generator style boilerplate. This is something that's well documented, well known about, as well as we probably actually have generators who already can do this too. Those basic CRUD operations. Get it in so you have something to add to. I know for me as an engineer, one of the hardest things is sometimes staring at a blank page, a blank class that you need to make. But if you have that boilerplate already there, your brain can be moving on to the next thing and helping to slide in what's next. So having the AI generate that basic CRUD for you can be a great jumping off point. RSpec test skeletons, and maybe let it get you some other basics going on there. This can help you with your process. Maybe you'll do your prompting where, hey, build my test first for me, And maybe you'll even start doing some TDD. I always have aspirations of actually doing test-driven development. Maybe AI will help me out with that. And then we have our migration. It can really help with your doing your Rails migrations or whatever database level calls, because that's something that's small and well defined in what its purpose and how it can be generated, as well as refactoring. Love it for refactoring. It's a very, very smart search and replace tool. Let it be that thing that you don't like to do. Because who wants to have to rename 50 files because you decided to go from a plural to a singular, or single, or to a plural again? And so this is something that it excels at. Let it do the crap stuff that you don't want to do, as well as a different documentation. Hey, when you're generating my scaffolding, add in some of the actual method documentation right there. Allow it to do what it does well, as well as Git commits. I don't think any team, if you're adopting a couple of different AI tools going on there, shouldn't be leveraging it to help you out with your Git commits. There should be no excuses anymore. But beware. Some things it just can't handle. And maybe this is one of those not yet type things. Complex metaprogramming is just not something that you should be passing off to somebody else. Security sensitive authentication logic. This is one of those that a lot of the authentication going on, we have so many different ways that you can do your authentication. It's not the most well documented on a singular approach. So it's one of those that it's kind of another one that you want to kind of tackle yourself. Plus, security. Like, are you going to trust the model over you who already has the deep context and where you need your security at? As well as performance critical operations. I definitely have had it spit out some very not performant queries that it wanted to do, like a each loop in a on a actual UI for displaying a list, and we know that that wouldn't work. How would that scale? Sure, for like your sample data set with like 10 users, it's fine. But then you think about staging, you think about production, you think about tens of thousands or even millions of users, and you know how that scaling can just go downhill very quickly. As well as different architectural level decisions and advanced relationships. It's one of those things that the full context may not be known by whatever tooling you're doing. You, as the engineer, have the context, as well as so DSL, domain-specific language going on there. Especially if we're working on in this level, is not something that it handles well. So we do have some good community-derived wisdom for this different usage. This is one that a lot of community members have advocated for. Let it rough draft. You refine. If it doesn't get it on the first or second try, don't get frustrated at it. Don't keep prompting. Take the time to dip into yourself. Never assume that that large language model, that AI, is right. You should and have the right to challenge it. And don't try to replace your brain with it, enhance it. And when in doubt, always narrow your scope and be specific. And so how do we really get to use our AI without losing our special Ruby essence? So when you are prompting and when you are working with it, always remember to try to get that developer happiness over efficiency. Maybe you use it to generate some convenience methods. Always think about how the end result is going to play with your already existing code or methods. It can't know how you like to handle those as much as you do with your experience. Remember, readability over cleverness. Maybe don't just keep the short method in, maybe keep the one that is more self-explanatory. Remember our human-centered design principles that always circle back to maths going on there. You can keep these in mind with your results. And so this is a quote here from Sean Godric. Ruby is the most human language I know, written for humans with interesting human foibles, and it reads like a human language. So we need to keep it that way by considering what code and what results we would put into our community. And so it's important to share your experiences, good and bad, all in between, because that's something that will help shape how it will be used, as well as how it will be developed and what the future will look like in it. Mentor your thoughtful usage, and contribute AI, Ruby-specific AI tools there. So we are kind of the keepers of these Ruby traditions. We're not rigid gatekeepers, but kind of think of it as thoughtful guides going on there. And so you can kind of consider what would happen, in 2012. I don't know. I can't say it's 2025, but I would say right now, this quote from Rich Steinmetz, it really encompasses what we're seeing right now in the AI tooling. It's kind of collaborating with us, but you still got to get into that IDE and your editor. And so let's consider with our resolution. AI is a tool, not a replacement. Trust your instincts going on with those results and what it has for you. As well as to remember, community matters. Pay attention to what's going on with the community. Put out what's going on with your results and what you're seeing. Remember keeping those clean, readable patterns that AI can learn on those, and that we can write our own story about how AI and Ruby work together. And so hopefully we found some powerful tools going on there. We know that there's a lot of excitement and there also is fear, but we're not alone in this struggle. And there's plenty of community wisdom out there for us to enjoy and look at and learn from. And so, probably moved that fast. We can kind of write our own ending here. One where creativity and our craft can coexist with these new tools. So we have kind of assumed our control, but this time it's how AI can help serve us as our Ruby programmers. And that's it. That's my talk.